Hi, boys and girls. Welcome to 6th grade life science. And today's standard that we are going to review is standard L6.3.2. And it states to develop and use models to describe the levels of organization within ecosystems. And that includes species, populations, communities, ecosystems, and biomes. Welcome to 6th grade science. Here is the levels of biological organization. Biologists designate different levels of organization of the natural world into species, populations, communities, ecosystems, and biomes. If you look to the graphic on the right, it shows you the biological levels of organization. Species are exactly that, individual species. So in our picture here we have zebras. Population means the herd of zebras, which would include the males, the females, the adults, and the juveniles. Then we have the community, and the community consists of all the other living organisms that the zebras interact with. Finally, we have the ecosystem, and the ecosystem consists of both the living and the non-living components. So the water and the energy from the sunlight, things like that. And then we have the biome, and the biome is where that particular area is located on the globe. We're going to start with biomes, and then we're going to work our way down to individual species. So here is a map of major biomes of the world, and you'll notice that many biomes are related to their location, such as the northern Arctic and alpine tundras or the mid-latitude forest. So this graphic came from NASA, and I really liked the colors that they used because it makes it very evident on how the different biomes are directly related to their position on the globe. The next slide is just a bigger version of the same graphic. I just wanted to blow it up and make it a little bit bigger, and you can find this graphic on the nasa.gov website, but you can see how, based on where you're located on the globe, what type of biome you're going to be surrounded by. So I wanted to take you back to the NASA website. As I was doing some research on biomes, I found this resource that I thought was really great, and it's on the nasa.gov website, and it's called Mission Biomes. And this would be a great opportunity for you to do some extra exploration of the biomes to further and enrich your learning and understanding. So I would suggest going back and visiting this website, especially if you have any more questions or if if you're just curious about different types of biomes. So, organisms depend on the details of their particular biomes for survival. Living things depend on the right environment. The environment must meet particular needs of the organism. For example, penguins and kingfishers both eat fish, but the penguin would not survive in the kingfisher's tropical or temperate environment. Neither could the kingfisher survive in the penguin's Antarctic environment. So, penguins, as you know, are at the southern pole. They're at the Antarctic, and it's cold. They have very extreme with their weather, and they survive off of fish. But the kingfisher, lives in a much warmer environment, and it would not survive in the Antarctic. But both of these species live off of fish. So they're just an example of different organisms who depend on more than just the food source, but they depend on the components of the environment for survival. So let's talk about ecosystems. So biomes are the global location, and let's get a little more specific about the different ecosystems within the biomes. So an ecosystem includes all the the biotic, which is living, and the abiotic, which is the non-living, components of a given environment. Ecosystems are generally divided into two groups: aquatic, which would be water ecosystems, lakes, rivers, ponds, oceans, wetlands, bayous, things of that nature, and then terrestrial, which is going to be our land ecosystems. Within an ecosystem, both plants and animals compete for survival. They both require the living and the non-living components. The living things in an ecosystem are interdependent. This means that living things depend on their interactions with each other and with non-living things for survival. For example, a tree depends on sunlight for energy to make its own food. A snail depends on plants for food. A healthy ecosystem is one in which many different species are each able to meet their needs. Here's a picture of a desert ecosystem, and in this picture you can see different both plant and animal species, and the arrows indicate who gets their energy from what. So the arrows point towards who's gaining the energy. So for example, the snake here, it gets its energy from all these different species that are pointing towards it, like this mouse and this mouse, um, and I'm not quite sure what this critter is, but this critter, you can see that the hawk, it gets all of its food source from eating the rabbit and the lizard and the mouse. So the arrows are pointing to where the energy is flowing. And what I like to tell my students is that's where the calories are moving. The arrow is pointing to where the calories are going. Okay, here is a picture of a rainforest ecosystem, and you can see both plant and animal species and who depends on what. You follow the arrows, and remember the arrows indicate where the calories are moving to, so who is obtaining the calories is where the arrow is pointing. That's the direction the energy is flowing. Here's a grassland food web, which depicts the grassland ecosystem. And it also does the same thing as far as the arrows. There aren't as many arrows on this particular one, but you can see the direction the energy would be flowing. Here is a tundra ecosystem. This is one of my favorites. This would be where it's very cold, and you can see the direction the energy is flowing. If you just follow the arrows, that shows you where the calories are going and who is consuming what. Now let's talk about a community. So the past slides were showing you ecosystems, which means they were showing you both the living and the non-living components of that particular ecosystem within a specific biome. The communities, however, are also showing you specific relationships among the living organisms. So this kind of takes out that non-living component and just focuses on the individual species. So it says at the top, communities are groups of interacting populations are called communities. An example of a community is all of the populations of zebras, elephants, giraffes, grasses, shrubs, insects, and other populations of organisms that live together in an African grassland or a savanna. So I have depicted two other communities, as you can see, that the different living parts of those ecosystems. Again, it sort of takes out the non-living component. Other than the aquatic one is inside of a water body. You can't not show that without the water. So that's inevitable on that one. So let's talk about populations. Populations are groups of interacting organisms of the same species are called a population. A population of organisms may be spread out within the ecosystem or exist together in the same area in an ecosystem, such as a herd of zebras in an area of grassland. So in my pictures here, you can see that I tried to just depict populations of specific organisms. So we have zebras, we have fish, we have the real picture of the ants, and then the digital picture of the ants that I included as well. So let's talk about what happens if we make changes to the environment. So changes in the physical environment can lead to population changes within an ecosystem. Environmental changes, natural or man-made, and limiting factors affect the health of an ecosystem. Examples would be abiotic limiting factors, including deforestation or seasonal changes. Examples of biotic limiting factors include disease or human activities. Natural disasters like floods, droughts, and fires bring changes in resources that will cause some organisms or populations to perish or move while permitting other organisms or populations to thrive. The basic factors, sunlight, nutrients, water, shelter, and space, and other factors, predator, disease, catastrophe, extreme climates, affect the health and growth of populations in an ecosystem. So I have a graphic here from STEM Scopes about what can limit a population. And so you can see the basic factors and other factors and how that can affect population growth and stability. So now let's talk about the species. Species are the individual organisms that are self-replicating systems and maintain homeostasis, which is the balance of internal processes that make life possible, by responding to external stimuli. These individual organisms have common characteristics unique to their species. There are over 8 million different species of living things. A zebra, giraffe, and fly are examples of different species. A healthy ecosystem is one in which the population of each species is just the right size to support the other organisms that depend on it. So we're talking about the individual components within a population. An individual male in a lion pride, for example, he has a particular role, and his role is to protect and reproduce within the pride to keep his pride strong. So every individual species within a population has an important role. So this is the last slide, and let's talk about what would happen if you introduce something to an ecosystem that shouldn't actually be there, that isn't there natively. So I'll just start at the top. It says, what do you think would happen if a non-native species were introduced into an ecosystem? The new species could actually damage the ecosystem. The balance of an ecosystem can be greatly harmed by the introduction of a new species. In the 1700s, European rabbits arrived by ship in Australia as a food source. Those that escaped started a population explosion. Since there were no natural predators of rabbits in Australia, there was no control of the population. Rabbits are herbivores, meaning they eat plants for energy. Millions of dollars of crops were destroyed by the abundance of rabbits. So, I mean, you and I think rabbits are cute little fluffy animals and they're native to here, so we see them here. But in a place like Australia, they don't have rabbits, not native, so they didn't have predators to help the population control. Okay, the same thing can happen with a species of plant. A new species of plant can also destroy the balance in ecosystems. An invasive vine from Japan was introduced to the United States at the Centennial Exhibition in Philadelphia in 1876. It was sold as a shade plant and as a plant to prevent soil erosion. The climate and soil of the southeast proved perfect for the unchecked spread of kudzu, and we have kudzu so bad in parts of Mississippi, and it does look pretty, but it's this vine-like plant, and it will take over a giant oak tree and basically block out all the sunlight and take the nutrients from that oak tree, and it can cause trees to die and other plants to die. And that's an invasive species that we have right here in Mississippi. So I hope you enjoyed our lesson on the parts of a biome and what is included, and I will see you next time.